Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. No reipehu tu maunga, no kuhu te awa, no Palmerston North Aho, ko Squance tako whānau, ko Hayley tako ingoa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So it's our Māori introduction. It shows our connection with whānau, it shows our connection with the land. And emergency management is all that. It is so interdependent of people, animals and the environment. But what I really like at the end of this as well, when we're doing our greetings, is that at the end we say that I see you as an individual, I see you as a collective, and I actually see the people that have brought you here. So your whānau that are at home waiting for you, or the animals that you have at home. So it's acknowledging that you are not just an individual, you are actually a collective that is coming to this room today. So emergency management, you're in the right place to listen to emergency management, right country. New Zealand has been assessed as the second most vulnerable country in the world for emergencies or in disasters. We are one behind Bangladesh. And that is because where we are located, and also some of the structures that we have around us as well. So we do rock, we roll, and we shake, and we do sink a little as well. So I have worked in emergency management for over 10 years now. I was the National Animal Welfare Coordinator for MPI for 5 years, and I can see some of my colleagues here. But in that 5 years, I had over 50 events that I coordinated from an animal welfare perspective. Not just me, there's a lot of us. So it does show you from an experience perspective, New Zealand is actually at the forefront of the disasters that we can have. But there's also ones that I would never have expected to be part of, which was the Christchurch terrorist attack. Whaikere Island was another one. It was offshore, but it did have some implications from an animal welfare perspective. So as people that work with companion animals, we know that New Zealand has a high companion animal ownership, yet only 21% of the population actually has adequate plans in place. So I'd like to see a show of hands who feels that they have a good emergency plan in place for their whānau and for their organisation. Yep, a few. Adele, I would really expect your hand up. Adele is a colleague who is an emergency management practitioner. Right, we've got some work to do. Okay. So what we're focusing on is the human-animal bond. And we hear a lot of negative stuff in emergency management, so we're just not going to do that today. We're going to look at some really good things. So the human-animal bond is actually one of the main reasons why animals have been included in the emergency management legislation since 2015. And it's from a negative perspective in the fact that it's surrounded mainly around human behaviour. So people will respond in interesting ways to protect their animals. They will refuse to evacuate, they will go back into cordon areas, and it puts lives at risk. We also need to consider that we are protecting our food, but we also, I don't think we do this enough, but we also need to protect our biodiversity. So New Zealand has one of the better legislations for animals in disasters because we include all animals. So it includes companion animals, it includes the primary sector, it also includes native animals, animals in labs, so it includes everything. We've even worked on bees. So everything is included, but as we know, there are a lot more animals than there are people. So resources are really stretched. So it requires a collaborative effort by everyone to be better prepared because we have got a lot more coming. The sad thing is that there's a lot more coming and they're going to be a lot bigger as well. So the Christchurch earthquake, although it was a huge event for New Zealand, it's actually considered a small earthquake. We have a lot more bigger ones possibly to come. So we all need to be prepared. So we look at the human-animal bond. So I definitely will be doing some positive stuff now. Right. So we all know that the human-animal bond is really strong, and people will do silly things, put themselves at risk to protect their animals. But we also see some amazing bonds that actually protects people. So as a coordinator during an event, when we have public meetings, I can rest assured that the line to come and speak to the animal welfare coordinators is a lot longer than any other agency that is there. And that is because people want to address their animal needs well before their own. And that's where you, as a collective, step in. Because it's really hard to connect with community at times of need, that animal agencies, animal organisations actually have a really unique role to play as a conduit to our communities through that human-animal bond. They will come and talk to you well before they'll come and talk to any other organisation. So you can help them with their animal welfare needs, but you can also help the community with their needs by asking one or two more questions about how they're going and what their needs as a family and a community are. We also have amazing work dogs. So these are I was fortunate to be able to work with these dogs. I was part of the veterinary emergency response team during the Christchurch earthquakes. So these are the New Zealand urban search and rescue dogs. All pound dogs, mostly pound dogs, have a really high drive, but they're amazing dogs to work with. So we know that we have these connections with animals in our communities, but we may not understand the longer or the greater reach of impact that the human-animal bond has. So these are photos from Cyclone Gabrielle's the Hoo-Ha companion animal shelter. So these are some stories I wanted to share with you because they are not stories that we normally hear. So on the left, Maddie McLean came to do a story on the shelter, which you usually see that. But the story behind these three dogs is that, and surprisingly, this is the first time I have seen it, is the majority of the animals that were in the shelter, the owners were in hospital. So they had all been rescued. The owners had not seen their dogs since the event occurred. They were both in hospital. So they knew that the dogs had been rescued and brought into the centre, but they hadn't, because they hadn't seen them. They were quite unwell in hospital. So this interview, they knew it was going to be aired, and this was the first time that they had seen their dogs. The feedback from that was, and they actually got a groom that every dog that came into the centre, decontamination is a thing. We decontaminated absolutely every animal that came in, and we had an amazing local groomer that came in and pampered all the dogs. They smell really bad too, so we do need to do some pampering. So this was the first time they saw the dogs. They said that seeing the dogs actually helped them whilst they're in hospital, because they could take their focus away from worrying about their dogs to actually focusing on their own health. So we have some really long-reaching connections. This one in the middle is not one I would have ever thought of, but our prisoners are really impacted when we have an event. They are locked away, they're not connected with their family, and many of their whānau are impacted. So they really wanted to do something. The prison officers worked with the prisoners and they made a lot of environmental enrichment toys for the animals that are in their shelter. So they felt connected to the response. They felt that they were doing something, and they were doing something quite amazing. And we can't forget all of our parts of our community, because they are all impacted. And of course, the police come in for cuddles. You got puppies? It's actually quite good, because the police come and people see the police around, and you get lots of different people. We had the army come, and the army came. We had special times for different groups, but you know that these guys have seen a fair bit and they need to have a bit of a rest. and this was part of their rest time. So coming and walking the dogs. We had the firefighters come, we had the police come, we had insurance assessors come. Now, we didn't actually know they were insurance assessors to start off with. They gave us that story a little bit later. But you could definitely tell they needed a break away from what they were seeing. So we can see the human-animal bond is not just for our guardians, it is for our whole community. So the animal shelter became a community hub. It was a place that people could come and connect with community, but we also had a lot of people that were there that had survivor guilt, that their neighbours had lost everything and they didn't. We had a lot of people in a lot of tears saying, why was I the one that wasn't impacted? I still need to do something about it. We had a lot of people come that lost everything but still wanted to do something for the animals. So when we look at the human-animal bond, we need to look at connection. And I did a PhD in emergency management looking at how we can enhance multi-agency collaboration, and I came out with having a one welfare approach. I've actually moved on from using one welfare as a language because my emergency management colleagues really don't understand what it is, and also it is actually an Indigenous worldview. So I really don't want to use a westernised term to explain what our Indigenous people already do. So it is acknowledging that we need to integrate people, animals and the environment together. But these are the three domains that we need. But networks, relationships and trust is really what is needed during emergencies. And that's, again, where you all come in. That's that being connected to community. Are you trusting your neighbours? That could be a bit of a stretch sometimes. But we definitely need to have trust, relationships and networks for us to be able to respond in the way that we need to. And I just want to share this story with you, and this is being shared with permission, but I'm going to change their name. So this is not Dave. This is Dave's, one of his dogs. We met Dave during Cyclone Gabrielle. He lost absolutely everything. He survived by driving on the train tracks with his dogs, and that's all he had. We met him at an evacuation centre where he had been for 10 days in a sedan with his two pitties. And when we went up to the shelter, he ran up to the team and gave us $50. And he said, I can see what you're doing. I really want to give you some money. And he looked really unwell. He'd lost everything. He was just wearing one set of clothes. Looking at his car, you could see there was a lot of condensation in the vehicle. And he was in a sedan with two pitties. He was not getting much sleep. So we'd offered to put a fence around him so the dogs could get out and he could stretch his legs a bit. And he said, no, he felt that was going to be too much work for everyone. So we offered for him to bring the dogs to the shelter, and he said, there is no way in hell I'm being separated from my dogs. This is my whānau, and wherever they go, I go. So it was offered to him to come to the shelter just to have a look anyway and find out what he needed. Now, he was living in a bus beforehand, and he said all he needed really was a caravan, somewhere where he could have the dogs, stretch, have a good sleep. So there was public funding, so Hoo-Ha raised some money, and they bought him this caravan. And this caravan was brought to the shelter, and he hung out in the shelter with us. He actually became an integral part of the shelter. He previously, beforehand, was not able to work due to injury, but at the shelter he was actually helping his community. I had been away for 5 days, and in 5 days I've actually been living in his caravan with his dogs, been giving back to community. He changed dramatically. He was not unwell. He didn't have the wet cough that he had before. And I can say too that his dogs are probably some of the best looked after dogs I've ever seen, because that's his life. And he now has a full-time job at the racecourse as the custodian. So it's an amazing story from someone who lost everything, was really unwell, but a collective of people came and just gave him something that he needed. So that's I'm getting the eye now. So I just really wanted to share this story with you because I think that we need to be aware that there are a lot of people out there that just need a little bit of help. And are you prepared? Because I know that a lot of you aren't. If you would like any more information about emergency preparedness, there are my contact details here, and the QR code is to get further information if you need that. Thank you.